subject today, which is computer says no when software goes wrong. Now, this came about as a result of a previous session, and probably as a result of all of the news around the topic of the post office scandal, the Horizon scandal. So this is what got us starting to think about when software goes wrong. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Julie Samuels, to open up the conversation. This is a conversation. This is not us. We are not the professionals. We do have a couple of professionals with us today, and there were on the registration list people who I could see from the NHS and so on, who will have some interesting insights, but they haven't joined yet. A couple of professionals have. So welcome everyone. I'm going to hand over to Julie Samuels, and please just feel free to join in and to make the session great for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. This is quite a strange one to put together, because actually it was the last session that we had, and it was actually Dawn when we were talking about misinformation, and we actually kind of moved on to talk about the Horizon scandal and other issues. And what we need to think about is, no matter how technology advances, software testing is non-negotiable. And I think that's one of the things that we forget about. You know, there are parameters that we're supposed to work in, and often those parameters, the lines get merged, the lines disintegrate, or maybe we're off the ball for whatever reason. And obviously every week there are new stories emerging about software failings across a myriad of industries, and this sparks chaos. It disrupts business, you know, whether it's your kind of personal, what you're doing at home, your banking, your, you know, social media, your day-to-day running of what you do. And obviously we've got issues to do with hospitals, blood banks, and all the various kinds of things that happen now in terms of that hacking. So when the computer says no and it goes wrong, the implications for us are huge and sometimes life-threatening. And these are kind of the things that I would like us to kind of think about and talk about. Next slide, please, Zoe. So we're discussing the idea of errors. And obviously, you know, we can think of lots of stories and, you know, things that have happened. You know, but what are the takeaways from this? You know, what do we learn? You know, can this be a positive turning point for us as society in terms of thinking about, as we move more forward with AI and all the other technologies, and how our reliance on technology continues to grow? When it does go wrong, who is accountable? How do we adjust? You know, occasionally we still get power cuts where I'm in Lincolnshire, because it's, you know, the dark ages still. And, you know, and there are moments where there's no power. The internet's down, can be down for like hours. The last time was a couple of days. And suddenly you're back to using your mobile data on your phone. And when you want to do all your, you know, your Domino's pizza order, that's fine. But when you need to kind of go on to do your online banking, or you need to book appointments with a doctor, and all these other things that require verification, that you might say, that they might say, oh, we'll call you on your landline. Oh, my landline's not working. Well, we can't verify you because you use a second phone number. All of these things in terms of the software and technology and infrastructure, they become a problem. With climate change, we've got issues to do with flooding. How will these things impact on the technology that we are now reliant on? So the error that we get is going to be a continual issue. Next one, please, Zoe. So myself and Zoe, we're having a conversation just before about the Millennium bug. So Zoe, do you want to tell me about, you said about the change of the date?
So yeah, this was probably the height of my IT career, actually. The Millennium bug. It was one of the things that loomed largest.
It's the funniest ever.
And I think, yeah, Dawn, we were working together at the time, I believe. Yeah, we were. And one of the things that made me laugh was, I mean, and it's not a funny thing, but it wasn't a total disaster. But I just remembered, and I've still got it somewhere, I was a member of the Royal Automobile Club. I had an actual car at the time. And I got my new membership card, and it said that it was valid until 1901. as a result of the Y2K, which I thought was just brilliant. I mean, clearly it still worked, but there were those small errors where the system was not prepared properly for a 4-digit repeat. And so that tiny little thing loomed so large, and it coloured what was otherwise a huge celebration across the world that used the calendar that we use anyway, for that to happen. But I've still got, that's one of my bits of memorabilia about Y2K.
Because I also remember the kind of the planning of what might happen on midnight. You know, would it all start to fall apart?
Nothing.
We all remember, don't you? Oh my God, it's 2 minutes to midnight. What's going to go wrong? Tick, 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 tick. Nothing.
Right, yeah, because I'm just trying to think, was that ITV or was that TSO for Y2K, Mac?
TSO, yeah, Y2K was one of our biggest projects. And again, like Julie said, I mean, we put projects together to mitigate all the potential risks, and come the following or the minute after midnight, absolutely nothing. But obviously we had to ensure.
Yeah, were you in the office? Were you on call at the time? How did that actually?
No, it was at ITV. It was ITV. I was in 2000.
Yeah, I was there with you. Yeah.
Yes, that's where we were.
Go on, Mac.
Sorry, go on, Mac.
No, not at all. I wasn't on call as such. We had the raft of our network guys. They were the ones who were primarily on call. We put the projects together to see how the systems, the client-facing systems would react. But they were the ones who were managing all of the legacy applications. And it was primarily legacy applications that had been targeted as potentially falling over.
Yeah.
But yeah, virtually nothing. I mean, I think there was, again, 1 or 2 very, very small failures, but they were mitigated and resolved very, very quickly. But in the whole scale of things, I mean, like what you were saying before, other sectors such as, I don't know, critical ones such as, infrastructure, healthcare, air traffic control, all of these, the potential things that could have gone wrong would have been disastrous,
Yeah.
And that unknown is actually really time sensitive. Yeah. And if it does go wrong, the implications would have been absolutely horrendous.
Catastrophic, absolutely.
Yeah.
But luckily we got the dome and a nice party. So
right, and some pretty fireworks.
Yeah.
Yes, we did actually, didn't we?
One thing we don't have, it's insurance against technological problems. We can't insure our the workspace or our activities if there is a hacker or something attack. So it's missing. It's a missing area, I think.
That's fascinating. So in a way, in the same way that flood insurance is a thing of the past.
Oh right, yeah, as an act of God.
Yeah, I didn't think about that in terms of the impact on a business, Rashida.
We have a lot of hackers attacks on computers. Even if it's a government job or a private job or anything, there's always sometimes you lose all the data in the computer. It's very important. It's your work, like databases and everything.
Yeah.
So
go on. Here in Las Vegas, MGM were hacked, and all the slot machines went down. And if you bear in mind, that's millions of dollars every minute, and that data was stolen. It was just incredible the way that that had been designed, in that was actually possible to do that and to take that business offline was quite extraordinary. But anyway, Julie, carry on.
So I was just thinking about the Bitcoin company's downfall, about actually how about being held to ransom, and how that has become a common thing when the software goes down. What percentage of that is where you're being held to ransom? Education,
So how,
universities, it happens. Yeah, exactly.
we're in the Wild West when it comes to things like Mount Gox.
Mm.
You know, the legislation is always behind what's going on. And if as I said, I didn't think about the insurance aspect of it, but if you don't have the legislation either, and it bothers me who's legislating sometimes as well. But anyway, Mount Gox was an incredible example.
And
Which
there's things to think about. Well, there's two things to think about. Well, there's when you're building a product and everything, there has to be some technical due diligence when you're doing that. So not only is it about breaking the software, but it's also what the implications are if some of that software doesn't work, i.e. leaking of data. And so once you start to leak data and everything, then you become vulnerable, either as a person or as a business. And so then once you've done that, then you have to think about the human impact of how that affects the end users. And I think in the last kind of 5 years, or maybe a bit longer, but especially quite recently where it's been in the public arena, i.e. there's been plenty of podcasts about this, is the human impact of how lack of technical due diligence can really affect people's lives. And I think actually your average Joe, who may not be technically minded, has really had an insight as to how that's happened. So, you know, there's lots of different efforts.
That's the pointing. This is the prime example, isn't it?
Well, and also the accountability here, no one's willing to take accountability. And in any other sector, so for example, I like to use the house building analogy. So if we're working with builders, okay, so someone builds a house for you, okay, they're bound by compliance and they're bound by rules. They have to build it in a certain way in order that the person who buys that house and everything isn't going to endanger their lives in any way, shape or form. And if they do endanger their lives, or the house falls down, or it doesn't meet various different compliance, whether it's eco compliance or any other compliance that it has to fall through, then someone is accountable for that.
Yeah.
However, technology in some instances is an invisible thing. We can't really see it. Sometimes we can't touch it. We do interact with it, but the bits that are potential to go wrong are kind of invisible to the naked eye. And so therefore, we don't apply the same rationale as if we're building a structure in the internet or online. So why are we not applying the same rules to the people that are responsible for delivering that product? That is what.
So I know it's not software, but the flat I had, the apartment I had in London, was built using all new building materials, which at the time were, you know, cost saving, hugely effective, and then 10 years later, immensely inflammable. And I find out that basically I bought a fire pit, really. How is that equatable? And I know the UK is more stringent than the US in terms of regulation. How does that catch up, Dawn, at Mac, seeing as you work in this? How does that due diligence get developed?
I think with software, I mean, if we go back to the Y2K example, in those days, I mean, there was a lot of, you know, new technologies or new threats, vulnerabilities coming out, and it was very, very reactive. I mean, now you can be much more proactive. You can use best practice frameworks for software, development, delivery, testing. I mean, we talk about the whole horizon thing. You know, if you look at the time frame, this goes back, you know, 20 odd years.
Yeah.
In those days, a lot of software development was almost like a Frankenstein's monster. It was bolted on. So you had, you know, rafts of developers who come and go from an organization. Someone else would come along, and rather than, and cost is obviously a major factor. people don't want to reinvent the wheel. They just want to say, right, okay, we've done this so far, we've spent so much money. Is this really the best application? Is this really the best, software for this particular purpose? And if it is, then we'll carry on developing on top of it. But the minute someone raises a concern and says, oh, well, maybe this particular piece of business logic needs to be revisited, it doesn't really serve, it's not fit for purpose, cost immediately becomes a major factor. So people will turn around and say, well, let's just fix it, sticking plaster, that sort of attitude. And unfortunately, a lot of legacy applications have been inherited, and not only have they been inherited, but then the vulnerabilities alongside those have been inherited. And offensive security professionals like myself, we look at that. We look at the vulnerabilities. We leverage those vulnerabilities to break into, in an ethical way.
Let's just
systems.
if we look at the post office situation, because it's created such human catastrophe.
There was a back door. I mean, again, these are
I mean, there's all sorts of ethical things that were wrong in that situation. Admittedly, it's been over 10 years and compliance has been much more stringent, let's say that's over the last 10 years, when everybody had to have an SSL certificate, and that was kind of mandatory, and there's all the other security protocols that we're implementing. But what we have to remember, there is a lot of legacy systems out there, and things that become unsupported, and then
100%.
a cost
That
comes in.
alone raises a raft of vulnerabilities. When something is deprecated or no longer supported, I mean, just pivoting from the Fujitsu one, the 2017 WannaCry attack on, the ransomware attack on the NHS. Again, that was leverage as a result of an operating system that was no longer supported. Windows XP had, I think, the patches had been released, but that's all they were doing. Microsoft, they were saying, look, you shouldn't be using critical infrastructure on this. And unfortunately, the NHS was, again, a cost issue.
Yeah. So I work with a couple of companies who would never use anything that hadn't been on the market for a year. You're just not allowed to go there. And I'm saying, well, I need the latest version of JavaScript, whatever, for this form to work. And they say, well, you're just going to have to wait. Is that, just in terms of a way forward?
And why did they say you had to wait? Sorry, if it hadn't, because they wanted
probably
it
because they thought it would be buggy. Yeah, I mean,
it was buggy.
Yeah.
Most early incarnations.
And then you were allowed to use it once it had been out in the field for a while. So all these, it's really complicated, and sometimes I'm reminded of my favorite equation is N equals NP. My favorite equation. So the way to find out if something is wrong and to do it again is as time consuming as to do it again kind of situation. Now, in the States, there's a new ruling that allows anyway, forget that bit. How do you, as an ordinary person, know when to say, no, this is the software, this is the system, this is what's going wrong, it isn't us? How do you bring the human element back in when the computer is saying no? And Julie, I think we've got some questions, haven't we?
Well, first of all, complete transparency with as much transparency as possible with your client and how their systems work, especially if you're working with a client who has a business critical system. It's often the business logic of the business. So you need to get them involved in understanding.
But what about me standing at immigration and it's saying,
okay.
Yeah, so I was in Sydney, Australia, heading to Christchurch in New Zealand, and it said there were 2 Zoe campers, and one was a criminal. That wasn't
Ooh,
me.
which one am I talking to?
Well, there you go. The OneCoin queen has arisen. You know, what do I do? I mean, that took about an hour, and they found actually what was going on. But that actually was, I can't, how do I as a human being fight against that?
Well, okay, so if you talk about best practice kind of cyber hygiene, Mac, that's one thing I guess we could.
Yeah, but also things like dependencies. You cannot be dependent on one, one particular system. I mean, the example you gave there, Zoe, I mean, straight away you can turn around and say, okay, if you think I'm this person, then let's go to another channel. For example, fingerprints. Fingerprints would have proven that you wasn't that same individual who they had classed as being, a criminal.
Yeah, unique identifying. Yeah,
unique identifiers. You can't put all your eggs in one basket, and especially with the proliferation of technology. There is no again, slightly pivoting back to the Horizon example. They had a system architect, security architect, whatever his title was, but he had been with the organization or with the post office and with that project for the best part of 20 odd years. He retired, and then they took him back on as a consultant. You've got a single point of failure there. You've got one guy who's never going to admit that I was wrong, because he was, the most senior person. You have to have people, as Zoe said, who are going to question and then say, actually, we think there's a problem here. And you have to allow people within an organization to turn around and say, look, we need to escalate this because we believe that this isn't working correctly, or it's not fit for purpose, or there is a security loophole here which can be exploited.
And I think,
I mean, just quickly, how far in, because I was so infuriated by episode 2 of the Post Office podcast. I was like, well, why haven't they tested the software? Do you know what I mean? It seems so blatantly obvious and everything. However, how far down the line, I can't remember, was it that they knew that they had backdoors in? Because then that should have raised a flag immediately. Well, if there's a backdoor in,
I think it's they went to an independent consultancy to validate it, and the findings of that consultancy were dismissed. In fact, I believe the actual consultancy themselves,
they were,
was it second sight, or
and they published it in some kind of magazine.
Magazine.
That's what they did.
Once it's in the public domain, regardless of the restrictions of an organization who turn around and say, oh, no, you don't know what you're talking about, this guy's more senior, etc., etc. Once it goes in the public domain, hopefully more people will turn around and say, actually, that sounds wrong, and there's enough, IT, security, whatever professionals in the world who are going to pick up on that and say,
but nothing gets changed really with people power like that. No one's gonna, unless you get a big enough group or a strong enough group or someone who actually says, I'm not gonna let this happen. My concern is that these days now, this
miscarriages of justice, and sadly things like deaths or accidents. That's what raises
getting a mortgage.
Reputational damage is reputational damage.
Credibility.
So how are we as society going to empower ourselves in a world where this is increasingly impacting, and particularly, I know it's your last point, Julie, but with using AI to determine where the criminals are going to be and where the next crime is going to occur, increasingly we're being laid bare to this world of technology which is not operating in our best interests.
I think we have levels. There's this idea that says that we have levels of control. We don't control all the technology because the technology changes and there is a lot of developments every day, each hour. If you buy your system today, maybe the next month will be another system, more performance, and another solution, and a breach, and maybe hackers can take on your But if you take the levels of control and you say, if on a strategic level I will use AI, then this AI that I will use in a strategic level should be very secured, and I need to have all the security products of this AI, and I will pay for it, and I will have a monitoring system. But if the level is an operational level, I will use AI like in education. It will be another system of monitoring. So we need to specify the levels of control that we are using to control the technology. Technology is not the end, but it's the mean, I think.
Yeah. And how
I
are
agree. Very well said.
structured to make this important?
Because there's human aspects of the lack of technical due diligence as well. Looking at the Ashley Madison scandal, in which that they had the data leak, and then they were taking that data, and then the staff were actually pretending to be, you know, potential suitors and stuff like that. So, you know, there's human interaction in the whole process and everything that lacks due diligence as well. Do you know what I
Oh,
mean?
sorry, is that the
Compliance.
dating thing? The Ashley
what?
Madison? Is that what can you just tell everyone what that was?
Oh, right, yeah. So there was a cyber breach Ashley Madison, which is the website that people go on to have illicit affairs.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, and so then it was leaked. They were blackmailed, as you normally would, and then you know, they didn't play a ball, whatever. So then it was leaked, and then you know, then certain people got outed, and then obviously it was the repercussions from that as well. But then when the figures started to fall, because obviously no one wanted to sign up to the site again, then they were using members that had left and pretending to be those people and everything to you know, try and keep the business going. So you know, there's all sorts of things going on wrong there. Not only is there cyber leak as well, but there's obviously people messing about with other people's data. So
The unfortunate thing, again, going back to AI, is now that AI has become an enabler. It's you know, the adoption of it allows, you know, organizations to possibly increase their, you know, productivity or business efficiency, etc. But it also creates more vulnerabilities, because now you have people, you know, who may not be as IT literate as someone who's been in the business for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. But because of the ability for someone who's less tech savvy to be able to throw something into something like ChatGPT or one of the other generative transformers and find out about how to do something unscrupulous, deceitful, surreptitious, whatever, underhand, and then they can use that to monetize. You know, ransomware obviously is the big thing everyone knows about, and I think what Dawn was talking about with that Ashley Madison thing, I think ransomware was part of that data breach. Not only did they breach the data, then obviously they encrypt it, and then they exfiltrate it, and then there's multiple, you know, streams, revenue streams there. You know, the threat is the first one. If you don't give us X amount of money, which, you know, ironically now seems to be in cryptocurrencies, you know, talking about the Mt. Gox exchange thing with Bitcoin. But on top of that, if you do pay it, then they may still where they've exfiltrated the data, they still may look for, you know, high net worth individuals or some high value data within the data that they have, and still threaten you again. So what do? You know,
because if you're a high profile business and you're working with high net worth individuals and everything, then net worth individuals are they're vulnerable, because there's a lot of things that you can be selling.
that data is your crown jewels. It really is. That's why you should protect the information.
So not only can you blackmail the business, but you can then be blackmailing the individual and everything as well. And the individual.
Yeah, I lived in the city. Dawn, you came round to where I lived. I was surrounded by offices that were redundancy offices. They were empty. So I was on the periphery of the city of London when the city was, well, no, it was still as big as Canary Wharf, but there was a redundancy BT office. It was kept empty. It was a physical form of redundancy. So if, as actually happened on with the bombing of the tube, etc., the physical business moved into the new space. What's the equivalent of that digitally? How are you running, you don't have to get into too technical a thing, but are you running, parallel data sources?
What you're talking about, Zoe, obviously is business continuity in terms of like physical premises, disaster recovery. With software, we would have staging servers, we would have, mirrors, we'd have load balancing. When I say we, the largest organizations would always have something along the lines of, using AWS or Microsoft Azure as with cloud platforms. So again, very few are now on premises. So the risk of something like a flood affecting you or a fire affecting you is negligible because it's all sitting on a cloud server or multiple cloud servers.
Until AWS goes down, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Until that goes down.
Right.
Yeah, and then they're responsible for a lot of businesses and a lot of infrastructure that then is all.
I can see that happening though, but in the meantime, Tom just wrote in the chat. He's actually on a train. He can't really speak. He's using chat. He said he was on a ferry on Y2K, and he was on an offline system, and he purchased things and was never charged for those things when he went back online. So maybe one of our biggest protections is it Faraday's cage? I'm gonna develop when I'm definitely offline, which is decreasingly the case, isn't it? It's actually really hard to be offline unless you're in Julian, Lincolnshire.
No, but in reality, and this is something that I was talking to Kane about yesterday, even a lot, your average person seen as being online as being on the World Wide Web or, being on your apps or your devices and everything. But the internet and the connectivity of technology goes much deeper, and it's kind of invisible. The things that you potter around your house, turning on, flicking about and everything, have got so much things that are relying on connectivity, technical connectivity.
We live in a hyper-connected world now.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, if Tesla gets hacked or some kind of or Uber gets hacked or something, do you know what I mean? Then, there's a whole different, and NHS systems or your energy provider or your water provider and everything. Do you know what I mean? They're all interconnected. And so therefore, if something gets intercepted and everything, then there's a whole bigger thing that's going to be going wrong.
But at the same time, there are a lot of young people now that don't want the smartphones. They're going back to the phone that Stace only got rid of about a year ago from her course, Stace, the old-fashioned, until recently, it was great because you had the old-fashioned
burner phones, as they're called now.
But there was demand for those phones now. Kids, a lot of young people, those are the phones that phone is the trend now. I've still got two of them, so like what? But
probably worth money.
Exactly, but to have that old-fashioned burner phone, young people want that because they want to be able to switch off from socials, whatever, but just phone a friend to have a conversation. So there is that kind of shift now where people are thinking, actually, what, it's good not to be connected all the time.
Yeah.
So Stacey's got a comment.
Go on.
Yes, Stace.
He's still a burner boy, he says.
Oh, is he?
So if we look to the future and think about the damage that was done with Cambridge Analytica and the manipulation and the move towards algorithmic content serving in terms of the 2020 election and before, this ubiquity of software is going to create war. It's going to create division. We're already subject to it. Is it too late to say stop? I don't mean you can't just go, oh, stop. What the hell have we unleashed?
Well, I say this all the time. When we were at Siberia, back in the good old days and stuff, we could never foresee how all of our exciting projects and plans and our inventions and everything, how it would have an impact on human society. We could never foresee that. So we were only thinking of, like, you know, online shopping, it would just make life easier, and online banking and stuff. We never thought that, you know, the data that we were sharing and connecting would be used against us. We never kind of really foresaw that. Well, I certainly didn't.
No,
Anyway, and even as far as going back when I first started the business 18 years ago, you know, I did a few little designs and everything. Steve, Mac and the guys, they just did a bit of coding, and you know, weren't even worried about security too much. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, I could share servers with clients to keep costs down, all that kind of stuff. And then slowly it's just become not more sinister and everything, but just you're more aware of the power and the damage it is doing to society. For the example, the way that the young people have used the word friendship. Do you know what I mean? It's just changed in the last 25 years. You know, friendship can mean someone that you've never met, never seen, and that you just play on PlayStation with and everything. But the younger generation, whereas the closest we ever got to that was maybe a pen pal that we had done a school exchange with, and we wrote to them for a couple of years. Do you know what I mean? But they wouldn't have been a mate, because your mate is your mate that you meet up with after school or go down the pub with and stuff. So the whole kind of construct of how technology has impacted our life, our health. I mean, there's positive things to be coming out of that, but in the context of this conversation and everything, it's actually, we've constructed all this stuff that's actually sort of being used against us now.
We're
So how
all
do we slow
vulnerable
that
in
down?
different ways. Like there's vulnerability in whether you're the way you connect, the way you socialize, the way you make friends. I did a lady on LinkedIn, and she posted a comment, and I liked the comment. I looked through it. I thought it was just a really interesting post. So I sent her a message to connect. She asked me why, and I said why. And then she told me that everybody that she connects with on LinkedIn, she's had conversations with and spoken to first. So this is her phone number. And we're really grateful to have some time to actually have a conversation and speak with her, because she likes my profile as well. So we're going to do that tomorrow. I thought, how interesting that everybody that she gets to know within that way, she wants to speak to first to find out about them. I like that idea.
Yeah. And I was thinking just yesterday, you know what? Don't not do it, but likes on Instagram. So what, really? I need you to actually
comment.
Come to the
Well,
event.
and also because take that offline. So
Yeah.
take social media, take Facebook offline, for example. So I walk outside my front door and I go, oh, I'm such a proud mum. It's my son's birthday today. Look at all the presents that I've bought him. Don't you think I'm great? Because that's what happens when you take that offline, isn't it? People would walk past you in the street, go, fuck off, get back inside.
I'd come and
go about your business.
Sure, I come round and steal them. I wait till you tell me you're out at an event.
Well, and exactly, and there's this, and there's a security
criminal
issue in that, isn't it? Because you wouldn't go outside and go, "Oh, my husband's just bought me a diamond ring, and here's a picture on my dressing table," or something that's recognizable, so that when you come in my house, you know exactly where I've stored it. So when you start to take those instances offline, you start to see how ridiculous it all is. And
that's when people drop their guard, because they live in this bubble, this social. But security applies in everything that we do in life. I mean, you talk about obviously online banking. You wouldn't in your wildest dreams, you know, think about leaving your online banking passwords and all that lying around. Yet, as Dawn just said, people are happy on social media to take pictures of high value items. As Zoe said as well, you know,
Yeah.
in a certain part of your house, and then tell the whole world I'm on holiday
yeah,
in
they do.
Dubai or wherever it is.
They do,
So
though,
for 2
don't they?
weeks, so you've
Yeah.
got
You
a
know what?
2-week window to come and
Yeah.
rob me. That's
It's
ridiculous.
funny that we're laughing. I don't know that
know.
we're going to be laughing for long.
Yeah.
No,
But it's true though, about the
agreed.
holiday. A friend of mine just posted she's gone on holiday. Photos of her and her partner by the front door, or we're at the airport,
Oh my God.
they're from Brighton, check out.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, oh,
How nice
the amount
is
of
that?
people that know where you live, and the
Yeah.
house is empty now, but you've told everybody you're away
I
for
tell you
2
what,
weeks,
though,
and
my
nobody's known.
absolute, yeah, my
Lily, what's her name and address? Can I talk about WhatsApp for a minute?
Oh yeah, sorry,
WhatsApp.
Stacey. Yeah.
I've recently had to go on WhatsApp. It's a boring story, but I absolutely effing well hate WhatsApp. But anyway, it keeps saying end-to-end encrypted, but that literally means absolutely nothing. I mean, if I wrote you a letter, that would be end-to-end encrypted. It literally means absolutely nothing. If we're all in a WhatsApp group chatting away, and you say something, you think it's end-to-end encrypted, but it isn't, because I can email myself that conversation and it's public domain.
Mm.
So people are just I keep telling people this and they don't believe me.
Yeah.
It's not it's not.
But you've still got your Nokia phone, so you don't do WhatsApp.
I know, bloody I have to now, but I've got a tape over my cameras. If I could get inside and cut the microphone, I would, and put a switch on it. It would be a big
Well,
switch.
and smart technology, domestic cyber security it is going to become more prevalent because people are obviously obsessed with their smart gadgets, which are
Internet of Things. It's everywhere.
yeah,
So
exactly.
we've got a friend who installed Amazon throughout the house. So
Mhm.
I'm frightened of talking about them behind their back now in their spare room, because I think
Yeah.
they're. And also, I nearly ordered, because I could, a trampoline for their back garden. And I just thought, how hilarious.
You were just
that
sitting
is.
there, weren't you? Just checking your
Yeah. I'm thinking, well, it's in the basket now.
What's the Amazon
Then I
one?
started
Siri.
thinking, yeah. So I took an Amazon thingy, Alexa, into work.
Alexa, that's it, Alexa.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I realized that it had text records of everything the team had said.
Mhm.
And actually, Julie and I fell foul of that recently, didn't we, with autopilot?
Oh yeah. Oh, well, let's not talk about that. Yeah, we did.
We won't go into detail, but we said some things.
We shouldn't have said. That was
Oh, God.
yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
that
believe
then
that.
would have come up on the autopilot summary.
Jesus.
So and Julie and I, we are so technologically aware and clever, and
But but that moment completely forgot, and it was afterwards like, oh
yeah, and we can't take that back. That's not our data to take back either. That's sitting there waiting for someone to actually. So does that person actually look at their autopilot summaries?
I hope not.
No, we say no, because that person is still being nice to us.
Were you able to get him to delete it or not?
No, we didn't even mention it.
Not our data to delete.
Oh,
It belongs to someone else.
But that is the problem. A friend of mine, she was demonstrating the other day how she could clap her hands, all the lights and stuff came on, and all the
brilliant.
rest.
What about light switch?
And then while she was doing it, her son said, "I can also do this." I literally got the power.
That's hilarious. I
I thought the irony. She said, "Oh, I can clap my hands and I can do this." And he said, "Yes, I got the power." And literally, everything went down. And then, because he basically went to the cupboard and switched electricity off. It's like, whatever. But the vulnerability that, she could do all the control, but ultimately he knew where the main control point was. Just turn it off at the mains.
Yeah, a more fundamental. So we've only got about 8-10 minutes left. So this is all, I find it interesting when we all start laughing about something, because that tells me it's coming.
But it's nervous laughter. It's actually nervous laughter. It's that we laugh because we worry.
Personally, to change this future, how do we individually do something about this before we march into this new Armageddon?
No, we're already in it. It's about marching backwards.
No, you're good point.
We can only go forward, But as as intelligent people,
Well,
we hope that
people.
we can change. Well, exception of me, we hope that we can change the world for the better, and our legacies that we make it better for the people that come behind us.
Yeah.
So we didn't foresee this 20 years ago, 30 years when we got into this,
Yeah.
but we know where it's going. Can we put the brakes on it? Can we slow it down? Can we alter it ultimately?
I think we have to change. We're not going to be able to change the technology. We have to change the way we do things. So we have to realistically, we're going to have to become an open culture.
And we have to get rid of that reverence to technology. We've all been, gobsmacked by what it can do, and we're also being hoodwinked by what it can and can't do. We have to change the way we think that technology is automatically right, or it's way likely to be right than we are. Actually, no.
Oh, no.
I think the other problem that we'll always have is where adoption of technology or any new technology is seen as some sort of competitive advantage. Businesses, by the very nature, or most businesses, by the very nature, it's all about bottom line. It's about revenue. It's about, and the example you gave about Cambridge Analytica, morally it was so wrong, but it was all about money. It was about how much money they can harvest your data, then use that to actually leverage ads that are being posted to people so that they can skew their belief of who the political party they should be voting for, etc., etc. With AI, you've got deep fakes. I mean, deep fakes have been around for a long time in terms of voice. I mean, there's a lot of high value threats. They call them business email compromises, all of these sort of things where people would craft emails purporting to be from the financial director or the chief executive to say send money to A, B, C, or D. That could be quite easily kind of intercepted or overruled by using another channel. But when you've got someone who's video calling you, and it is, to all intents and purposes, the chief executive of the company, what do? Do you say, no, hang on a minute, I'm going to put the phone down on you and I'm going to go and ring you back or whatever? Or do you actually think, actually, this is the chief executive, he's talking like the chief executive, he's talking like the financial director,
Very
it's
good.
perfectly
Has
plausible,
technology
very
made
well
us
crafted.
Has technology made us nefarious, though? If you think about business practice, like part of my creativity project with the lawyers was looking about how they did business back in the day. You've been around 200 years. How did you survive? Because before the 80s, you couldn't even advertise as a solicitor anyway. So it's about revisiting, making human connections, and about them being the pillars of society rather than the expensive pariahs that they've been known, that they've been known to come in recent years and everything and stuff. So has technology allowed us to be more ruthless and to not have standards and principles in terms of business?
I think it's muddied the waters, definitely. I think a lot of people use it, as I said before, as for the competitive advantage. And if it means that they make money out of it, even if it's for a short period of time, there's enough money now to be made, sadly, with hacking. I mean, you talk about, crypto exchanges, the amount of money that's flowing through these places. Sometimes they think, well,
online
one
dating
small,
scams. I mean, it's everywhere,
whatever
isn't
it may
it? Do you know what I
be.
mean?
Yeah,
But those kind of things are actually having a human effect on
massive
society as a
impact.
whole.
Yeah.
You know what I
Morally.
mean? It's just trying to make human connections through technology is alienating us and making us sad.
Yeah.
I
So
think
why are we doing it?
I think one of the finer points to make is with America, Trump and the elections, the fact that he's running again and how he uses technology and
His
everything
social
possible.
platform,
Yes, he is the master manipulator. How
But
technology
here's the
can be
thing,
used.
Julie. Here's the thing, Julie. Do you believe, and I think personally, I think a lot of people would be naive to believe that other nation states didn't get involved way before.
Oh,
I mean,
I know.
Trump's
Oh, we
doing it
know
all by
they.
himself. He's
Oh,
doing
we
it by
know that
himself,
they did. Oh, we know
and as you
this is.
say,
Oh,
yeah.
this is.
But now
you-
it's almost like they're sitting back and letting him do it because he's doing it all by himself. They don't even need to get involved. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. And that's exactly how it's become. And that is dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That makes us all
Absolutely.
vulnerable in ways that we didn't comprehend.
Yeah.
We've not comprehended.
Well, it's manipulating, isn't it? We have the ability to manipulate people in a way that we've never been able to before.
Yeah.
Which obviously changes the kind of structure of people's psyche. It's just like, oh, I can write a few lines of code and everything and get myself, fat wedge for next week. It's just like, it's almost the tools are there saying, use me.
Yeah.
Can you show me how to do that?
So,
what is the truth? What is the truth? When software goes wrong, what is the truth?
Money, isn't it? It's the period of the technology implementation when it's almost, I feel like, we should have all been doing it. We should all be richer than we are now, but we didn't take advantage of
because
that.
morally and ethically, we're not that way.
Yeah, exactly, because that's,
Well, I could
that's
be
it.
Bush.
So could I.
Listen,
Get some ideas now, though. Must admit.
and just in the interest of fairness, it's not Trump, it's the people behind him.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And
I think it's from any political party and everything. We've been manipulated across the board here and stuff.
Yeah.
And so,
but at least
and also,
he admits, he doesn't lie about what he's doing. He's a showman, and it's like, well, it is. He doesn't lie about it. He says, yeah, it is. So what? Can't do anything about it, can you? It's out there.
Yeah, and the magician element of that, saying what just is the reverse of what's actually true. I really do believe we need to work harder on finding the truth, because we're being asked to set truth aside at the moment, and I think it's a very dangerous thing to accept. But we're gonna round up now. I've really enjoyed that conversation. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dawn, for suggesting we actually record it as well. So we will make this available. Julie and I are going into our strategy phase for our next set of our new mission statement. So we won't be back until September, where we will be announcing some very interesting changes to the Augmented Society Network. We're still talking about tech, but we're just going to kind of refocus on where we're going. So I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who's here today, and I wish you all the very best for the rest of the week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.